priest from Holy Redeemer on occasion when you call. They're from Mexico City, so it's very educational.
You got company?
Let's see, technology is great when it works,
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic.
When it works.
but when it doesn't,
You're in a bind.
violence and technology both mix.
If it works, I get it. If it doesn't work, Randy did it.
May not be for her fault, but she's taking the blame. Every time we get a new employee, I said, just wanted to let you know, if something goes wrong today, it may not be your fault, but you are gonna get blamed for it. Be forewarned.
Cameron's teacher said, "Did you send Cameron with money today for his books?" I said, "No, ma'am." She said, "Well, he had $12 and $2 bills." He got them out of his own wallet. To get for him.
Because Bobby had a whole bunch of those.
Yeah, and we paid his allowance with $2 bills, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he got it out of his own wallet for his own library books.
That's cool.
Met with,
Ooh, Lord of mercy.
Rick Simmons.
My dad always,
With Rick Simmons.
even
Maple Garden.
till nearly the time of his death, he would scold me for wearing my hat. You don't wear your
Most of
hat.
it, yeah. I like.
When that means
That's a
Right.
my mother and grandmother. That was a
Wouldn't- you wouldn't
big
talk.
no.
How come women can wear their hat in the house and men?
It's just different. It's just one of those things you accept as different.
Just get over it.
Be careful, you hurt your wife.
And ours is a part of our style. Y'all are just like that.
You saw that deal for mine. You got beat more with the numbers. They're gonna look pretty.
The women in your church wear the big hats.
You know, they used to, prior to COVID and us staying at home, they used to,
Actually, it is all-
well, maybe a year before COVID, because we got a new pastor.
Every year we say we're gonna do it, we don't. This year I'm just
Relax,
For
I guess.
future,
At least right now.
nothing there.
But my church used to be known as the big hat church.
Was it?
St. James.
Yeah.
So, it's on Flesh, it was on, yeah, it burned, yeah.
Well, my sister called yesterday, she's frustrated, because she said next year, we just plan a trip.
Tom, how's your day, sir?
All right, so far so good. It's all right.
Start with him. So. But I might ask her to sit down. That'd be a good idea.
Managed to keep my head down.
Just a second pair of ears.
Oh yeah. Well, I think until I need her to record that.
And then send out
How about yours? Really?
You told me.
That's why I went and dropped off.
My desk.
What did he say about that?
Really? Is that good?
From my state job.
No, because that means I'm staying till
They're not gonna change your orders. They're not gonna make you lose. They're not gonna.
Yes. Well, sure, you start.
But we fix try the court of public opinion. So if they're Simmons has got an opponent now, she's good. She's got an opponent, and if I was running against them, I'd just blast them with it.
Oh, that's what they're gonna do. I would.
They're conservatives. But now we're gonna test it. And so they're gonna have people this thing. It's just one. So they want it done.
Well, last time I checked, you're a citizen of the county, right? You're a citizen of the county, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I am too.
Yeah.
What city? Oh, yeah. Well, gosh.
Merry Christmas.
That's what I thought.
Hey, Michael.
Citizens of the
How are
county.
you?
Good, how are you?
Promise no smacking.
If we must. I had a delicious
Mike off.
stripes
You be like,
chimichanga.
Oh, really? Should I count you? You got two?
Smart aleck.
I'm going to call this work session of the Odessa City Council being Tuesday, December 7th, year of our Lord 2021, 3 p.m. I call it to order. An invocation will be given by Councilmember Tom Sprouls. Everybody will rise for the invocation.
Pray with me, please. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for being our God and for caring for us, for providing for us, and for forgiving us. We pray, Lord, the things we say here, the things we do here, the decisions that are made will bring glory to you. We pray, Heavenly Father, that you would be in our hearts as we go through this meeting. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Everybody can be seated. Item 1, we'll have a presentation by the Office of the Attorney General for the Opioid Settlement presentation. Who's going to be joining us on WebEx? Everybody look at their screens.
Yes, my name is Amanda Sanders. Can you hear me okay?
If you can go up just a tad on the volume, that'd be
Hello.
helpful.
Hi, this is Amanda Sanders from the Texas Attorney General's office. Are you guys able to hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Everybody. Thank you.
Great. I'm also joined by my colleague, James Holian. He's an attorney with our Consumer Protection Division. Thank you for having us today. We'll just quickly go through a presentation on a recent opioid settlement and what it means for Texas and the city of Odessa as well. Please let us know if you have any questions throughout or at the end of the presentation as well. Can you all see the presentation that I'm sharing on the screen right now?
Yes.
I'm assuming yes, hopefully. Okay. As you know, the opioid crisis has heavily affected our state. We've seen drug overdose deaths increase by nearly 32% just in the last year. We know this is primarily driven by the pandemic. Although it has not been at the forefront of the news, this is still an epidemic in our state that we know cities, communities are needing money to address the issue. And we are thankful that we have the opportunity with money on the table to do that with this settlement. In July of this year, Attorney General Paxton announced settlements have been reached with these 3 distributors, McKesson, Cardinal Health, and AmerisourceBergen, and then also with one opioid manufacturer, Johnson & Johnson. Combined, this is a $26 billion settlement across the entire country. You can see how it's broken down there from the distributors and the Johnson & Johnson settlement. It's also including some injunctive relief that's going to change the industry, so hopefully we don't have to deal with this going forward with some of the issues that we've encountered with some of these companies. Texas could receive as much as $1.5 billion total from this settlement. The actual amount that our state will receive depends on the amount of participation of cities, counties, and other political subdivisions in the state. Texas as a whole, our agency, we have officially signed on to this settlement, but it is up to the individual counties and cities to also join on. And James will get into that a little bit into what that means exactly. But that is why we're presenting to you all today and ask to join on to this settlement with the state as well. The sign-on period is upcoming. January 2nd is the deadline to sign on to this. And I'll turn it over to James, our attorney right now, to kind of get through some of the weeds of the settlement. And please feel free to let us know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Amanda. And again, this is James Holian. I'm with the Attorney General's Office of Texas and the Consumer Protection Division. And before we get into the specific money, let's talk a little bit about those injunctive terms that Amanda just mentioned. Those terms that are going to help change the industry. Number 1, Johnson & Johnson is out of opioids for at least 10 years. Out. No opioids. Not going to be manufacturing them whatsoever. And then as far as the 3 distributors, remember they represent 90% of the industry, or the distribution industry. And this injunctive term, the injunctive terms are going to solve a major problem. You see, there was really no oversight into what each other company was distributing to any, particular state, county, or city. And so this is going to create an independent clearinghouse that will, this independent clearinghouse is going to compile the data, identify red flags, and send those companies, directives to address the issues when they spot them. And that's something that all of these distributors are agreeing to. Next slide. Now, we'll start with the big picture, the meta picture, if you will, on the opioid settlement. The money, that $26 billion, it was agreed by General Paxton in the other states. The Texas's overall allocation of that is 6.29%. And so that's where you get that almost $1.5 billion figure, and that's paid out over years. But as we'll talk about later, there's a lot of front-loading payments on those, so we'll get into that. But a key factor is that these are split into base payments and incentive payments. And I'd like to say that's kind of like about a 50-50 split. And the base payments are gonna be received, so long as a city like yours signs up, base payments are gonna be received regardless. But the incentive payments are really designed to encourage participation and prevent future litigation. And so we'll talk about how that works in a moment. Next slide. So this is the offsets and suspension of payments. So if a subdivision like yourself, if Odessa has not sued, and we're asking you to join this settlement and to agree not to sue Johnson & Johnson or the 3 distributors on this issue. If you haven't sued, don't sue. Don't sue. But if you do sue, that's what this offset and suspension of payments is getting at. Because if a county or a city after the fact decides to sue later, then there's a suspension of all the payments that have been, or of the future payments, and there's a potential offset to future payments depending on how the litigation plays out. And so instead, on the flip side, if everyone joins now, we get more money. But if somebody decides not to, does their own lawsuit 5 years from now, then that might turn into an offset, and that's where we'd be left with. Next slide. So the goal is to bring the most money to Texas. The maximum funds to Texas means getting all participating litigating subdivisions and non-litigating subdivisions to join on to this settlement by January 2nd, 2022. And that's by getting releases from you folks for past and future claims. And so, there's 128 litigating subdivisions. That's 110 counties, 5 cities, and 10 hospital districts, as well as 3 school districts. We've been talking to all of them. And then 2, all the general purpose subdivisions with populations over 10,000, such as City of Odessa, and then as well the covered special district. So that's a total of 406 that we're trying to get everybody to join on to this settlement. Next slide. Now, how do the settlement dollars flow into Texas? Well, one of the questions we get a lot is, if my county or my city signs up and executes these releases, how do I get the dollars into the county? Well, that's Senate Bill 1827 and the Texas term sheet. Now, Senate Bill 1827 codified part of the Texas term sheet. The Texas term sheet was a term sheet that was negotiated between General Paxton as well as attorneys representing the major cities that were litigating, intrastate within the state of Texas. And so, this is the total, we've talked about the national numbers. This is how the individual cities and counties are gonna get, and they're gonna get 2 types of payments. They're gonna get direct payments, and then they're gonna get access to funding for abatement programs. Next slide. So as I was talking about a moment before, the Texas term sheet and Senate Bill 1827. So yeah, this is the agreement between General Paxton and the major litigating counties, and it divides the money. 15% to the state, 15% directly to the subdivisions, the cities and counties themselves, and then 70% in a common fund that's gonna be accessible and is gonna be distributed through an abatement council. And let's see, and so this allocation model within the state divides those direct payments based on a series of metrics. It was based on population, it was based on the amount of morphine milligram equivalent that was flowing into that city or county, It was also based on overdose deaths and persons who identified as having opioid use disorder. So all of these things factored into the allocation within the state itself. And it also created the concept of a Texas Opioid Council. Now, what's that? That's a 12-member council that is independent. This money that's going into this 70% common fund is not general fund dollars. This is comptroller money governed by these 12 independent Texas Opioid Council persons who are going to be an independent group of experts in academic and medical profession who will control the bulk of the funds from this settlement based on approved uses. And we'll talk about it later, but there's a 12-page document on the Texas Attorney General's website that gives all sorts of uses and potential uses that your city could put some of those funds to use. Anything from law enforcement, education, medication, or counseling that have an opioid nexus. Next slide. Now these are next two slides are the slides you guys have been waiting for. This is the actual abatement allocation slides. And this is the amount that your regional allocation this is the estimate and a keyword estimate, but the estimate based on full participation. So this is a portion, this is Odessa's direct payment portion of that overall $1.55 billion settlement for Texas. And this settlement allows the funds to be used for both past and future abatement. So basically you can reimburse yourself for past expenses of an opioid nexus or opioid reason that Odessa has already incurred. And that's gonna be your own internal auditing processes. There's no reporting to the state on that whatsoever. And so, this is gonna be an 18-year payout for the distributors and a 9-year for Johnson & Johnson, but it's all expected to be front-loaded. In fact, I think, and Amanda can interject here, I'm pretty sure Johnson & Johnson's all gonna be paid upfront in January. Is that correct, Amanda?
Yes, the way that it was reworked, to our understanding, is that Johnson & Johnson would pay that $127,000 and some change as a direct payment in January. I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, okay. So the $682,526.50, as you were saying, that would be paid out over that 18-year period minus that $127,000 from Johnson & Johnson. So technically, the $554,000 is what would be paid over 18 years. But you will see of that distributor's payment, the first will come in March or April of next year, followed by another payment in July, and then every July thereafter, about 80% within the first 2 years. So it's heavily front-loaded.
Yeah, and Amanda makes a great point there. It's heavily front-loaded. So you're really going to see 2 payments in 2022, a third in 2023 by July, and that's going to be about 80% of that $550,000. So, the next slide. So we've talked about the direct payment to the city of Odessa. What about this regional allocation? And this is that 70% of the settlement funds that are going to be governed or allocated through a council. And so this right here, you guys are a city located in Ector County, so you're in Region 14, and as you can see, that's over 12 million from the distributor settlement. That's over 2.7 million from the Johnson & Johnson settlement, for a total of $14,948,737.20 in this abatement allocation for the region. And they broke it up by regions because they didn't want one county or one region to be able to just, have great grant writers and get all the money and leave everybody out. They specifically broke it down into separate regions by Health and Human Services regions, and even that allocation had to do with all of those, metrics about population, morphine equivalent volume flowing into the region, overdose deaths, and persons identifying themselves as having opioid use disorder. So that nearly $15 million, this is going to function like a grants program. Your city can submit to the council once the rules are set for how the council's going to dole out the money, but you're going to be able to submit to the council for both your past and future abatement strategies, and the council is going to ensure that these funds flow directly into the region. So again, that's how the abatement program part is going to work. Next slide. And I'm just going to go through the next slides really, really quickly. The bottom line is you're going to see over the next 3 slides that going all the way back to September 2017 to date is that we've been involved in years and years of protracted litigation and settlement discussions. So, in other words, General Paxton has done the heavy lifting here to get a global settlement with these opioid defendants, and we're just asking you all to now sign up and be a part of that so we can get the money into Texas. So the next steps, to join the subdivision, you need to do 3 things. Sign up to the settlement and execute releases. Those releases, I say 3 things because there's 2 separate releases. There's the 3-page form for the distributors, and there's the 3-page form for the Johnson & Johnson settlement. The third thing you need to do is execute the Texas term sheet. And that is basically agreeing to the model of distribution that has been codified in Senate Bill 1827. So adopt the Texas term sheet, and just so you know, we've got a model resolution on our website for your convenience and use if you so choose to utilize that information. All 3 of these forms are available on our website, and then if you agree to them, you can email us directly, a completed copy of those forms at the website. Last slide. And so again, these are the confirmed sign-ons. As you can see, we've got over, as of December 1st, we have over 300 signed up. There are about 60 to 80 counties or cities, subdivisions who have told us that within the next week or 2, they have on their agendas to finalize their resolutions of the Texas term sheet and approve those things. And because it's a crunch time, and in order to get those maximum funds, we need maximum participation. And so that's why we've come and asked you before January 2nd to sign on.
Can you back that last slide up?
The list of the
That is
subdivisions
a
and cities.
presentation. Again, if you have any questions that think of after this, you can email opioids@oag.texas.gov. All of those documents that you would need to sign on to, and also including the sample resolution, are on that website, as James mentioned. But at this time, does anyone have any questions for us? I'd be happy to answer.
So the cutoff date's January 2nd for us to respond or sign
Yeah.
on? Can you back up and go back to the list?
Yes, absolutely. And this is not a fully updated list. This was, I'm not sure when the last update was. I know I think we have actually 338 confirmed sign-ons now. But you can see the most up-to-date will be on that website. As we get confirmed sign-ons and their documents sent in, we are updating our website with everyone who has signed on as well.
Council, any questions? Discussion?
The only question that jumps out at me is on these abatements. Do we know what this has cost us? Do we have a number? Do we have any?
Sorry, it's kind of hard to hear if that was a question.
I'm sorry. I just was asking our city manager if we have a number that we know that we've,
It's gonna cost us.
that we can go ask for.
No, so I think under this proposal, council, there is a dollar amount that the city of Odessa could potentially ask for. And I think from a staff perspective, we want to do a little bit more research in terms of what's eligible. Obviously, healthcare is not our main operation. So understanding under what category the city would be able to submit and have documentable expenses would be important to us.
Right.
The other consideration here is the payout terms. It seems like a good portion of the dollars are available initially, but then there's an extended period, I think they said 18 years, so that's another consideration for us.
16 years.
But we do have fire and rescue expenses, I know, for ODs and stuff, so I
Sure.
would think that's a logical one, but.
So we'd like to understand what the reporting requirements are gonna be, because
Right.
that's always the key. These dollars are great, they're available, and I'm certain that we can use them, but we need to understand that component of it.
Well, it's the grant, if I understood her right, there's no reporting, it's the way you write the grant, correct? What you asked for.
Yeah, but it won't be to this day. Well, do we have any questions for anybody on the WebEx?
Yeah.
I think the reporting question would be good to ask, them today.
Sure.
Okay, so here's a question. The question would be is, we sign on, how detailed, how long, what's the process for the reporting of the abatements? Do we do that as to the state, to the AG's office, or do we do it to our Region 14? Do you have a response for that? I don't think she can hear. Can you hear us?
Sorry, it's a little, I'm not sure if there's like a chat box, it's cutting in and out for us to hear.
Can you hear us right now?
Somewhat, yes.
But outside, we're just laying in on that, okay. Maybe we can just send that in an email, could we do that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So is there anything else, that you'd like to, add on to address the council?
No, this is it for us. James, do you have anything else?
No, appreciate, your time and, that's all.
So,
I have a question for James. You had mentioned that the analysis on how you split this up came from opioid use and deaths and those things. Is that scorecard available on your website?
Yes. So there's a 15-page list of non-exhaustive expenditures that you could use this for. It's on the website as well.
That's what
It is not limited to those uses. I know a lot of cities are looking to give this to their police departments for Narcan, purchase of Narcan or Narcan training. Some are using it in their school district for counseling or education purposes for their kids. Some are partnering with medical facilities, hospitals, in their community to, for a specific program or to sponsor a bed, for those who maybe need to sleep off an overdose. I know these are just ideas that I have heard of as we have met with various cities and counties across the state. And there's a lot of examples on that list that you can look at. But direct payment, as James said, you would not need to report that to the state. Just internal purposes, mark it for what you use it for. It would just be your own accounting procedures and your own auditing purposes on that. The additional fund is what the $14 million that you would apply for through that grant process. That I'm sure we'll have some reporting protocol. We don't know what that'll be yet, but and what you would use that for. We'll have a little bit more stipulation. But that direct payment, it's really up to what you guys could use in your community. And I would like to point out that we actually nominated a medical professional, Sanjay Patel, from he's a hospital district employee in Midland and Odessa. He is serving on the Opioid Abatement Council to be a voice for more rural communities. And so that was a priority for General Jackson to get someone from an area, from y'all's area. And so I know he has a background in neonatal abstinence syndrome, and he'll be bringing that to the table, and he'll be also overseeing that funding for the grant process.
I appreciate that information. That really wasn't my question. My question is, in determining how this was divided among the various districts, divisions, you used a complex scorecard to determine how the money was split. My question is that available on your website?
Matrix.
Yeah, what's your matrix and how did we score?
I gotcha. James, I don't know if you want to add to that. I mean, really, the way that it was determined how everybody got money, is that what you're asking, is how it was determined which cities and counties got the amounts that they did?
Right. And I can provide some data on that. I think the most direct answer is no. I don't think there is a breakdown deeper than the Texas term sheet itself on the website. And the Texas term sheet itself lists all of the amounts, exhibit B and C on the term sheet list the amounts. How those were arrived at, I could explain, and/or there is a direct contact at opioids at texasattorneygeneral.gov or oag.texas.gov, and that question's email box is not just a catch-all that nobody looks at. You know, the lead attorney in our division who's assigned to these opioid cases actually mans that response. And so if there's something specific that you do want to know more information about, they would be able to respond to your email directly. I can provide you with a little more information, though, about how that allocation was made if you'd like to hear it.
It really doesn't matter.
No, I'm not, the reason for my question is I want to know where our strengths, as far as the opioid problem is, where are our strengths and where are our weaknesses? And I would think that matrix would show us that.
Amanda or James, looking at the list of opioid remediation uses, most of those, in fact, 90% of those uses are, for example, treatment assistance. They're for pregnant and postpartum women, expansion of recovery programs. Those are programs that the cities typically, or this city typically does not engage in. So would there be an ability to then utilize subrecipients to use those dollars?
Did y'all hear the question?
That was a great question, too.
Let's try. It's kind of breaking up on our end, kind of difficult to hear everything, but
Could we
if you want to
email
put the
those
question in
questions?
the chat box, we could, that way we make sure we answer it correctly.
Okay, so we don't have any further questions for you guys. We'll go ahead and let you go, and then we're gonna discuss a little bit more about where we wanna go in the direction. One last time, does anybody else have any more questions for Amanda or anybody? Okay.
I'll comment on, I saw y'all's presentation back in September, and I saw where the different cities and the counties did sign on to this, and so I am aware of it and looked at it since September. So how many cities and counties did you say have signed on right now?
I think about 600, over 600.
Was it 600?
I think we need to go on the website to see the updated list. I think you're looking at this.
They're having a hard time hearing us.
They can't hear us, no sense in
We're
talking.
getting allocation list.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think they're having a hard time.
Yeah, they're having a hard time hearing us.
Okay, we'll just go ahead and let it go, and then we'll continue with our work session. Guys, thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll be in contact.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
So the Permian Basin Regionals discussed this back in September,
Correct.
and then you're a part of it, and then so the Permian Basin, our Region 4 has already joined in and signed
That is correct.
the settlement, and okay, and the county has too.
Yes, that is
Can you
correct.
give a little bit more information on what the county's doing?
So the county actually hired an attorney to take care of it on their end. Robert White is gonna take care of it, so the county won't be actually out any money if there's no money left. He's agreed to represent the county and do all the paperwork and the filings.
I guess there's gonna be
So I guess it's really up to, if we wanna do the same thing, it's not gonna cost us anything to do it.
But I think that the question that the city manager put in together is that since we don't engage in a lot of these, projects, can we reallocate, in as far as
On that,
subrecipients.
On that 15-page list on page 13,
It has
it does
first
say
responders.
first responders. We can use it for first responders.
Yeah, and that's one of the points that Councilmember Thompson had made, from the standpoint of Police Department OFR, is it worth looking at? And I guess it's just go from council member to council member of where they want to go, we want to proceed with this. 'Cause I think you said earlier that, it's a process, to get the money and upfront it. And we were talking about, what, $500,000?
Over
It's
60,000.
80% is gonna be allocated from the distributors in the first 2 years, 22, 23. So 16
682.
years,
Yeah.
there's gonna be 20%, which is not a lot of money.
Which is 146,000.
So the thing is that we don't want the administration portion to, be a higher number than the allocation.
So we'll get 80% of it in the first 2 years?
22, 23 from the distributors.
Yeah.
We
get all of Johnson &
From
Johnson
Johnson
up front.
Johnson particularly,
It's up
probably
front.
get it all up
Right.
front in
Right.
January, which is 127.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Because if we get 80% of it in the first 2 years, that's 545,000. Then we'll just get the rest of the 682. So just over 120, over, 16 years?
Yeah. Makes me wonder what the state's charging for the. to
And
run
that's
the
if,
trust fund.
and that's if all the, participating, we only get that full amount if everyone
Everybody
participates.
participates, right.
So is it on a sliding scale?
But,
So how much?
well, that's what our estimated amount's what he was saying.
That's our estimated amount.
That's our estimated amount.
When
based
anybody
on-
else signs up.
If everybody signed up, the way I understood it, if everybody signed up, these were our numbers.
Or if everybody doesn't.
But what if everyone doesn't?
Well, then it'll be pro rata, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Be some kind of a pro rata calculation. Has
Well-
to be, has to be.
Here's a question. If there's a consensus that the council wants to move forward with this, Michael, who does it fall on? Does it fall on? Well, fall on. I kept looking at Cindy.
She's trying to go into the chair, Mayor, don't
We've got the budget finished, so come on, she's got time.
Yeah, I gave this presentation to Natasha in September, just for us to look forward at. So we are kind of on the wire, as far as making a decision. But it was presented to me on September 16th, and I immediately forwarded it to.
So would it fall on the city
Fall
attorney
legal,
to
I
fill out
think.
the paperwork and then the process? I mean, is it a?
We can fill out the paperwork. I think there's 3 pages. I did forward this on to the manager's office because I think it deals a lot with finance also. And so I didn't think it was in my purview to cover the financial part. But the 3 sheets attached, the 3 things attached, legal can, if it's the council's pleasure, we can fill those out. We've looked at them. We've looked at, everything. And so it's not going to be hard if that's something the council wants to do. So.
Well, I'm not interested in going to outside counsel like the county does. That's a waste of money, I think. We got in-house people that are competent, and then,
So I
that's
think,
just my opinion.
obviously, we're not making a decision.
No, I'm just
Looking
voicing
at
my
the
opinion.
list, I guess I need an answer to that question, because there's only one item on that list of 15 that really we would have the ability to control, and that is buying medication and training for our first responders. Every other item that's listed, and it's items like treatment medication, it's, as I said, pregnant and postpartum women, I guess there's services for those folks. Expanding treatment for neonatal programs,
We don't have anything.
expansion of warm hands-off programs and recovery services, treatment for incarcerated populations. All of those would require some sort of sub-recipient to do that, because again, city currently does not engage in those
Right.
programs.
Right.
Do we pay for, like, Narcan?
Yes.
Or is that a donated?
No, we pay for those medical
Okay,
items.
so that
Yeah.
one thing, I have no earthly idea how often that's used or how expensive it is.
I will tell you that it won't be the amount of dollars. I mean, it's some portion of dollars, but it's not
Yeah.
that significant.
Okay.
Explain on what Narcan is.
It's if someone overdoses, it's a.
Brings you back to life.
what?
Yeah.
Brings you back to life.
Reverses the effects of
Yeah.
Of the overdose. It's the injection into the
Yeah,
heart.
so that's on the ambulances, right?
Yeah, I think
Or the
PD probably
bleeding.
carries it. Jerry, do you know?
Yeah,
Okay.
they do.
So we've got a use for the money. We just don't need, I don't think we just need to spend it on outside counsel or staff. I mean, if our staff thinks they can handle it, it sounds like As long as she thinks she can handle paperwork.
Well, I think at this point, if I'm getting it right, is there a consensus to move forward to ask that question about using subsidy recipients? I guess January 2nd is our cutoff date.
Yeah.
We will have one council meeting in next Tuesday, and then we're off. So, if there's a consensus, do we want to, from the council, do we move forward with this and give direction to the staff to look into it, and then get back with us?
Try to get it on the agenda.
Get it on the agenda for Tuesday. That sound agreeable?
I think it's worth looking into. We have to, I agree with Michael, to see if it's gonna be worth
Yeah.
the effort to
Right.
administrate it, and based on the people we have that are already full, so I'm
Yeah.
all for helping with the problem and getting the medicine that they need, but we also have to
Cindy,
make sure it's worth our.
Cindy, we're committing you. You have anything you want to put into it?
Cindy's already committed.
Screen now,
Sorry,
Cindy.
one more thing to do.
Michael, anything else you want to add?
No, sir. We'll do.
You think it's
a
worth
little bit more
pursuing,
detail.
Michael? The staff thinks
Mr.
it's worth
Johnson, I
it?
think if I get some answers to the questions, we
You-
can certainly let the council know.
You'll be able to.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Recommend.
Yeah.
Cause did I?
It's hard to
and
turn
I may
down
have misunderstood.
free money.
I thought they were saying, on that
There's
list
other,
of items
the way we're reading
that,
it, there's other stuff besides.
that
just
wasn't
the,
all
first
inclusive.
responders.
Or did you
There's
take it that it
there's-
was?
I took it that it was.
Okay.
Like,
And I may have
Give additional
misunderstood
goodwill.
that, cause,
Give some of those
one
money
of the
to
things I was
organizations
thinking
within
of,
the
and this
city.
probably is
Michael's
too
asking.
far-fetched,
Yeah.
is on, like Marita's demolition, when we have houses that we know have been utilized for
Do to
for
get-
drugs, if
Right.
any of that money could be allocated
It
to that.
doesn't look like it. I'm looking at the list right now, and I don't.
And I don't know why this isn't something that they're generating to the hospitals and the nonprofit organizations. There's 4 in Odessa that handles opioid addiction
Yeah.
issues. So you would hope that they would allow us to do that
Yeah,
with a
right.
minimum of our time involved as overseeing the sub-recipient, because like we said, most of this is not something that we normally deal with, and that was our hesitation with it in the first place,
Right.
was, besides the little bit that we see with,
Yeah.
NARC and stuff like that.
See, that surprised me also, because also looking at what the proposed allocation is for Ector County is tiny, and they have the jail.
Well, that, and then nothing to the school district.
I know,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean,
So that
the
would be
the biggest educators of the dangers of drugs is happening at your school district,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
and there's nothing allocated to them.
If you don't mind checking on that,
We will.
that'll really help a lot.
Okay, any further discussion on item 1? Thank you very much. We're gonna move on to item 2, Board of Survey update. Mr. Shelton. I've got a PowerPoint. Get her started.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, distinguished staff members. Good to see you today. I'm
You
gonna
got distinguished.
distinguished.
We just got a
No,
good
no,
afternoon.
that's your time. You're supposed to,
Let me move over to Michael.
Rarefied air.
Kidding.
Do you know what PowerPoint was supposed to be?
I'm not aware of that, Phil.
I can make copies of that real quick.
Well, she emailed it to me. I left all the pictures out because it was that thick. And, I'll just email everyone the PowerPoint.
Oh, don't.
Yeah.
I don't see it on this.
I think that's the option we have, Eddie. We'll get it emailed to the council. It's-
Okay, I just assumed it
Apologize
was
for that.
here. She put it together. So anyway, I'm here to give you a report on the Board of Survey. The members of the Board of Survey are myself, I'm the chairman, Paul Weaver, Deanna Cosper, Jesse Yanez, Jim Cox, Dallas Kennedy, and Vicki Gomez. Vicki Gomez was first appointed to the Board of Survey in 1975, so she served almost 40 years. I was appointed in 2003, so that puts me around 20 years, and Jim Cox is the next in 2007, so just over 7 years. The function of the Board of Survey is to enforce Article 310 of the Dangerous Building Ordinance. determine what action should be taken when a building does not meet the safety standards of the city, and authorize the court, authorized to order securing, repair, removal, or demolition of a building that does not meet these standards. How this is funded is through CDBG block grants. So if we determine that a residential establishment needs to be removed, boarded, repaired, whatever, the block funds pay for it. In a commercial setting, a lien is set and the owner of the properties is liable for those costs. So the process is the dangerous building official, which is Vashti, she inspects any unoccupied buildings for the presence of hazards or violations. She obtains photographs, researches the ownerships, and posts notices and prepares all the case files. The dangerous building official presents all the cases along with the supporting evidence, and then the board of survey issues an order based upon the evidence and the testimony presented. Part of the process are the inspections are made by the fire department, the police department, the health department, the building inspection department for each property. They put comments and recommendations from each. The tax information is obtained from the Exeter County Appraisal District, and utilities information obtained from the City of Odessa Water and Sanitation Department and Encore. So we make sure that we cover all our bases before it gets to us. And the goal for this is the goal for the City of Odessa through abatement of dangerous buildings. We want to present a safe, clean, and economically viable city. We want to provide the citizens of Odessa with a healthy environment, growth by attracting business owners and new residents with desirable living conditions, affording citizens neighborhoods that increase in value instead of decreasing due to unsafe, unsightly, and dilapidated buildings. So the results for the City of Odessa through abatement of dangerous buildings from October 1st, 2015 through September 30th, 2021, there have been 285 structures removed under the orders issued by the board. The board also provides over numerous cases that result in action by the property owner to revitalize, renovate, and stimulate the economy. And the following structures, which you do not have, are a few examples of the results. So there's about that many pictures that I assumed would be here. But in essence of time, y'all spent too much on item number 1, so we're not gonna look at pictures. But if you go through a neighborhood and you see a house that once was dilapidated and then now is gone, a vacant property is much more valuable and attractive to a investor or purchaser than a house that's dilapidated. If you live in the neighborhood that's got a house that's, it's a crack house waiting to happen. And the same with commercial buildings. You know, they represent our community. So this board through the block grants is able to revitalize, beautify, and just, keep things moving. They're not stagnant and stale and just sitting there getting worse and worse. And so it's been a great program. Like I said, I've been here over 20 years, and there's been a lot of success stories that are in there where the property owners actually said, I guess I got to get off my butt and do something now. So they'll do it and revitalize it and make money with it. So that's my report. If you have any questions, just wait till I leave and ask them.
Council, any questions, discussions?
Eddie, I have a question. Is it still set up to where, like, if a property is presented to you guys, the property owner has the opportunity to secure that property before it goes to another step that could include demolition?
Depends on the nature of the facility. So if the facility is in bad repair, then it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Then we'll go ahead and issue a removal. But it also goes back to how many times they've come before us. So if we've issued a board and clean and we have to do it over and over again, well, then we'll issue a removal. Just kind of, some people do and some people don't. I remember Mr. McCain I would always ask him, we always have a building inspector here, and I'll always ask him, well, can that be rehabbed? He goes, well, with enough time and money, anything can be rehabbed, right? So we take that into consideration, and we take into consideration the people who come to defend their properties. A lot of times it's it's been in the family forever. I grew up in that house, and yeah, but you don't do anything with it anymore. I mean, this sometimes gets them, okay, now we got to do something. And so it's not always, let's just tear it down and get rid of it. If it looks like they want to put an interest into it and spend their own time and money and efforts doing it, a lot of times it's come back and it's taken them 6 months to get anything done, but they're moving slowly. So we'll just keep it on the book so we can just kind of keep up with the progress and make sure that they don't stop, and that they still get their notices, hey, you're coming up before the board again. So that just kind of keeps them going until they get it done.
Do y'all meet quarterly?
We meet quarterly as funds are available. So if there's no funds available, then there's really no properties that we can review, and so we'll maybe miss a quarter.
Council, any more further questions? Mr. Shelton, thank you for
All
your
right,
time.
thanks for what y'all do.
We're gonna move on to item 3, consider annual renewal of Motorola P25 radio system maintenance and support. Mr. Parrish.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
This would be another request to pay a bill. This is our maintenance renewal for our P25 radio system. We pay this every year. I believe this is our third out of year number 5. The total is $447,693, and it will cover the time of October 2021 to September 2022. Any questions?
What is the Motorola P25 radio system?
This is the radio system that our fire and PD, that they use out in the field.
Okay. Council, questions?
Right. Thank you.
That was quick and fast.
Yep, that's what we're good for.
We're gonna move on to item 4, consider approval of purchase of street sweeper trucks for street department. Philip.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor. This agenda item is to consider the purchase of 2 street sweepers for the street department. One of the units will be a Timco Regenerative Air Sweeper, and the other would be a Schwartz mechanical sweeper. These are scheduled and budgeted purchases through the Equipment Services Equipment Fund. The total purchase price is $570,088, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Council, any questions for Philip? Any discussion? This is just one street sweeper?
This is 2, sir.
2.
Well, yes, sir.
What's are they different uses?
Yes, sir. So the regenerative air sweeper is essentially utilizing a vacuum to suck up anything that may be out on the street, and the mechanical sweeper has a large broom under it, and it can sweep up thicker materials. So you would think that the regenerative air is the typical sweeper that you'll see out on the street. So an example, right after the parade, there was confetti and trash within the streets, and so that was used to pick up the streets. The mechanical sweeper would be utilized behind construction. So if we have a sill coat of a road taking place, something of that nature, and there's loose gravel, something of that, it picks up construction material easier than the regenerative air.
Gotcha.
So how many will that make for us?
We will have 6 in our fleet, but this is just replacing 2 and putting 2 back in. Yes, ma'am.
Good.
What do you do with the old ones?
They go to auction. We have a contract for an auctioneer. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Philip, thank you very much. We're gonna move on to item number 5. Consider award base bid for air handler unit C4, alternate bid number 1 existing for handler C1 motor municipal court unit.
Good
Mr.
afternoon.
Anderson.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This agenda item here will replace an existing air handler unit at municipal court, which is now 35 years old, and it's reached its life expectancy. We have a second air handler there which is alternate number 1, which will replace the motor for that. This is a 2020-21 supplemental project that council approved. We worked with JSA Architects for the mechanical side of this project. We sent it out for bids, and we opened bids on November 30th, and we received 3 bids back, and those are included there. TDI at $46,796, First Service at $59,933, and the Bosworth Company at $46,510. Staff worked with JSA to evaluate the bids, and we're bringing this item to you for the award to the Bosworth Company.
Council, any discussion? Any questions for Scott? Scott?
And maybe we can keep Denise's office a little warmer.
Thank you, that would be nice.
Thank you.
No complaints.
Can you work on this room?
We're gonna move on to item 6, consideration award of Aljet. How do you say that? Algicide?
Algicide, yes, sir.
What is that?
It grows
So-
in your swimming pool. No.
Right. In the water treatment plant processes, we have basins and things, and at the temperatures in the summertime or spring, will actually generate algae, and so we use
Algae,
that to keep from
algicide,
having
there you
algae,
go. Yeah,
algae
you're-
buildup.
You have a pool, that's why you have to deal with it.
So these 5 items right here are our annual bid and for purchase of chemicals that are used in the water and wastewater treatment processes at the treatment plants. And as you were indicating, Mayor, the first one is for algicide. We see a 0.4% increase this year on algicide, which is certainly very reasonable. And so we're looking for, we're recommending award of that to HydroPlus Ltd. of Abilene.
Any questions? All right.
Tom, do you want to mention to the council cost increases? I don't know if this is a one that we saw a pretty significant cost. But let's
Yes.
talk about that, because obviously that's important for them to understand how those chemicals have increased in price rather.
Yes, sir. We've seen dramatic increases in some of these, and so I'll kind of touch on those. A lot of it appears to be related to oil byproduct. A lot of these have some oil process in generating them, and et cetera. And so some of it appears to be that. Could be some of it COVID-related issues, but these are those price increases that we may be hearing a lot about in the press and that type of thing, but they're definitely substantial. So this second item is for sodium hydroxide, and we use this at the wastewater plant. So when we treat the water, we chlorinate it at the end of the treatment process at the wastewater plant, and then we have to dechlorinate it so that we're not putting chlorinated water out in areas that they don't want us to. But this one has the low bid was DPC Industries of Sweetwater, and it has a 19.3% increase over the last year. And, so the estimated annual cost for this one is $288,000. Our normal budget for this is about $180,000. So at those numbers, we normally are budgeting a little higher than we expect, but this one will cost us more than what we generally have there. Liquid ammonium sulfate is another item we're looking to award to Chameleon Industries of Mesquite, Texas. This item has an increase of 58% over the previous year. So this one, our estimated annual cost on this is $126,400. And ammonia is mixed with chlorine for treatment of disinfection of our potable water. So
How many people bid on this?
So this one had 3 companies bid: Chameleon, Chemtrade, and Univar. So there were 3.
Okay, thank you.
The next one is liquid gas chlorine, which we do use for disinfection. This one has increased. So we buy it in two types of systems. One is 2,000-pound cylinders of chlorine. We use those at the main plants. We use so much chlorine that they come in those larger volumes. We also use 150-gallon cylinders, 150-pound cylinders. I'm sorry, both are tons. 1-ton cylinders and 150-pound cylinders. The 150-pound cylinders we use at some of our smaller booster stations and for boosting the chlorine. The larger 1-ton cylinders have gone up by 56%, and the larger cylinders have gone up by 31%. So we're seeing a significant price increase there as well. The estimated annual cost is $345,390, and this is a single source. DPC is the only supplier in this area of Texas. Liquid ammonium sulfate, aluminum sulfate is used as a polymer or coagulant in our water, so it sticks to the small particles in the water so that they're heavier and we can settle them out in the big basins. And this chemical is up 27% over last year, so we're looking at $311,250 for this year on that.
You're gonna run through all your contingency funds just on these purchases.
Yes. It definitely has an impact on our budget. We have some things that we're looking at to try and cover that. We don't know that this is a one-year thing. We certainly don't expect this type of increase next year, but we're not certain that this won't come down. But you know how things are. Sometimes they don't ever come back down.
I would go ahead and plan for it, because I think it is. I think we're just seeing the beginning.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But that's all in your mind. It's not really happening.
No, it's not, isn't it?
It's not really happening.
The Secretary of Interior says it's all COVID.
Yeah, right. Hey, Tom,
Or Congress.
the new plant, I know it's ways off, but will it be more efficient handling these products? Would it, because of the new dynamics with the systems?
Probably not substantially. The treatment process itself is pretty much the same. We will have a little more efficient sedimentation basin, but more in terms of space and things like that than it will be in terms of chemicals. The type of water we have, and we do conventional treatment, so we don't do a lot of advanced treatment, but not likely to reduce that a lot.
Okay, that's one question I had.
Any other questions? Any discussion, council? Mr. Kirk, thank you.
We thank y'all very much.
Thanks, Tom.
We're gonna move on to item 11, consider renewal of group life insurance, AD&D coverage. Mr. Wells.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. This, for those of you who haven't been here before, is sort of our annual housekeeping. We talk about all of the various insurances that we purchase over the course of the year. We actually don't purchase a lot of insurance. Right now, we purchase 5 insurance policies. It's pretty much been the same thing for the last quarter century. We've made a few changes over the years. We don't really consider insurance and insurance purchasing the main function of risk management. We spend a lot more time trying to keep claims from happening, and when they do happen, we try to spend as much time as we can keeping the cost as low as we can. We also spend a lot of time taking care of our employees, their spouses, and their children, and we also spend a lot of time dealing with citizens. All of that is in terms of, if you look at the slice of our time pie, negotiating and arranging and discussing insurance is maybe 10-15% of our time. That doesn't mean we don't take it seriously. We take it very seriously, and we try always to get the best deal for the city and the taxpayers. We want to make sure that we insure with insurance companies that are going to pay claims. Otherwise, the premium is sort of wasted. And that from time to time sadly happens if you don't pay attention to who you're doing business with, both from an insurance standpoint and from a broker standpoint. So we work hard to try to pick people that have both the financial capability and as well as the reputation for paying the claims that they owe. It also helps if we do business with people who have experience with municipal government. If they don't have any experience with municipal government, sometimes they are shocked to discover what they insured, and then it becomes awkward. So we work hard at trying to find the ones that are left out of the universe of insurance companies and the universe of brokers to do that with. We've got 7 items on the agenda tonight. The 4 of them relate to benefits. 2 of them are insurance policies. 1 of them is a contract, and 1 of them is the renewal of our plan document. The good news to start off with, and then I'll sit down and let the smart lady come up and talk to you about benefits. The good news is that our premium right now for a significant number of our employees is still 0. It's been 0 for 27 years that I've been here. It will be 0 again next year. The family coverage is $37 a month. That's about as cheap as I know how to make it.
Yeah, to the employee.
37 a month for an employee and their family, their entire family, however many people that may be, spouses, unlimited children. You can add one other person in addition to the employee for $17. But if the employee, if they select our largest deductible, which is really not all that large, we have 3 choices. If they select our largest deductible, the premium is 0. There are very few cities with whom we compete for employees that can say that. We frequently are visited by employees who have left here and gone elsewhere. I can recall a couple of our police officers who became police chiefs elsewhere, who came by to visit me sometime later to talk about how much they were paying for the same benefits at their new city. Most of them for family coverage, and both of them, and the ones I'm thinking about, still had a couple of children at home. They were paying $600, $700, $800 a month, sometimes close to $1,000 a month, for what they were getting here for $37. It's not worse coverage, it's the same, or in fact better coverage. Their deductibles are lower, their copays are lower, the networks are as large and expansive. The coverage is the same, the exclusions are no greater. The only thing that's different is that we actually administer our plan. And the lady who I'm about to invite up here is the one that does that. And to a large extent, the reason we've been successful, and I always hate to use the word successful when it has anything to do with healthcare, because I don't know that anybody is successful in healthcare. But we come pretty close. So with that, if you will allow me, I'll introduce the lady who actually runs benefits. Her name is Delia Ortiz. She does a great job, and she'll take care of those 4, and then I'll come back for the last 3. Delia, would you like to join me?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon.
As Mr. Wells stated, most of the items that we bring to you during the end of the year is a lot of housekeeping. These policies that we'll present to you, we've had for many, many years. Of course, he already explained all the fun part of it, so I'll just come up here and talk to you about some of the technicalities. The first item in the agenda that you'll find is the life insurance that you mentioned. Our life insurance is 1.5 times base to all employees. That includes accidental death and dismemberment, which if somebody has an accident and they lose a body part, or if they die in an accident, the policy does double. So we've had several cases where that's been a real good benefit for our members. This is the 2nd year of a 3rd-year contract that we have with Standard Life Insurance. It's provided through STA benefits. One of the good things that we were able to acquire this past year was the 3-year contract with a guaranteed renewal rate. Okay, that's very hard to get, especially considering our claims laws. For the past 4 years, our claims have exceeded our premiums. So, you know, we're real happy that we were able to attain that contract through STA benefits.
Can you explain a little bit about what that guarantee is?
So we are able to accept up to a 3-year contract. The guaranteed amount, like you can do a contract, but with insurance policies, the carriers do come in and still request a renewal access every year. And depending on the claims, even though you have a contract, they can still say, you know what, we can't renew for the same fee. This is how much the rate will increase. For this particular contract, and it's not the first time, there's times that we're able to get a 2-year guarantee. So what that means is that we have a 3-year contract and the rates cannot change regardless of our claims history
So
for
we're in
those
the
3
second year
years.
of that 3-year.
I'm sorry?
We're in the second year of that 3-year.
Yes, sir. Second year of our 3-year contract, so.
Okay.
Delia, when you said the claims exceeded your premiums, is that just because of several high dollar claims, or do you go through and see maybe if
In 2021, to date, we've had a couple of high claims. Unfortunately, we've had 2 or 3 COVID cases of employees that we've lost. So it's been because of that. But normally, some of the high claims it's both. But the majority of the time is just we have quite a bit of claims. We do insure retirees, so they tend to,
Amen.
they tend to add to
Not
that
me.
loss history.
Not me. Not losing
To
too
the
much
loss
on me.
history. The good thing about retirees, they do pay for the full premium themselves. Okay, so those losses don't tend to affect our renewal as much, but they're still considered in the group.
So the premium for the life insurance, like most, I mean, it's higher premium for a higher claim. What's the minimum? 25, 50,000, 100,000?
The minimum or the maximum that we can pay on a claim, it's 1.5 times base salary. It could be up to $500,000.
Okay.
Or so. And like I said, the minimum, it's usually around 25,000. For retirees, it can be as low as 4,000, and usually the maximum is 60,000 that we allow them to take. It's 1 times their base salary. 1 times their base salary with a maximum of 60,000.
Okay.
So, but as for active employees, that again just depends on their salary. So it's different for everybody.
And so the budget's are we paying the premiums? The city budget's paying the premiums, or the employee is paying for the premiums?
The city pays the premiums. The city pays the premiums for the employees, and the retirees pay their own premium.
So what's the average cost per employee for the city budget?
For the city budget, we pay about $6,500 a month for all employees.
All employees?
All employees,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Which is how many employees?
Right about 850, 875, give or take 10 or 15 a month.
Okay.
And we pay just about that much just for retirees. But again, they contribute to their own premium. So
Do we happen to know how many retirees we have on?
we have about 80 retirees. That's just the retiree. That doesn't include dependents. Of course, the coverage doesn't cover the dependents. So. Okay. Any other questions?
Captain, any other questions?
Just for curiosity, if this is a 3-year guaranteed contract, why does it have to be renewed every year?
Part of what we do is we bring these policies up to council as a courtesy. As I think somebody alluded to earlier, the council members change. So we want to make sure that all the council members, if we have a year with her, or every 4 years, we want to make sure that everybody's aware of these policies that are out there.
Okay.
And so that's one of the reasons why we like to just be forward and make sure that you guys are aware of those policies.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right. The next item is for our stop loss. We also recommended renewal for our stop loss policy. This covers any medical claims that may come in excess of a $400,000 deductible that we have for each plan year. Okay, the coverage is with Berkshire Hathaway through Risk Strategies. This particular policy, I also like to mention that in 2020, which means we collected in 2021, we also had a significant large claim, stop loss claim. However, we were also able to attain a renewal without any increase in premiums.
And so is this renewal 2 year? I mean,
It's
automatic renewal, 3 years?
It's at this point we're on a 1-year renewal. We're getting ready to go out for RFP for this particular coverage, and then practically up to the last minute they came in and offered a no premium increase renewal. After discussing with purchasing, they indicated that we were allowed to do that. Obviously, it's in the best interest of the city, especially considering, again, that we just had a large claim the previous year. So,
Okay. Council, any questions?
stop loss. The next item is for the hosting support of claims administration software. As you guys might be aware, we are self-insured, obviously, but we're also self-administered. So we actually pay our claims in-house. That requires, very complex software that we have access to. We do require a hosting site for those services and for that support. Most of those components have to be run on a high-powered PC, devices that are very high-powered, obviously take more resources than your regular office PC. So not only that, we have other issues as far as security, loss, damage of data, hacking, ransomware, as well as HIPAA privacy guidelines. So that is why it's one of the reasons for the demand that we have a very professional supporting hosting system for our claims administration. When we pay 100 to 75 claims a day, those processes can take up to 15 components between the minute you start a claim and between the time you finish it. When you have that many claims, that process has to happen within 5 seconds, and it does, So we have this hosting system that keeps that data for us and supports our software.
Have you had any problems with hacking?
We have not. And another thing that I really like about the hosting system, they twice a year they do some testing. They actually move the data to a different location. Then we come in and test it to make sure. So they literally send a person with your data in a plane to a different location because they want to make sure how long, if there is any disruption, how long is that disruption going to take? So, like I said, I really like that about them. They actually go through the exercise process to make sure that they're going to be available.
Council, any questions? Go ahead, continue.
Okay. Finally, the last item is the adoption of the Family Health Project Plan. This is our plan document. Every year we bring this to the council. Part of the reason that we adopt it every year because obviously there might be something that we covered last year that we're no longer covering. So we have to make sure that every year we have a new plan document per se. Even though there's very few changes to it, when we go through the adoption process, it allows us for that. That way you don't have liability from last year into the new year or vice versa. So we are not recommending any changes to the benefits as far as internally. However, any changes that might be in the plan document are due to legislative mandates. Okay, those are usually adding or increasing a benefit. Rarely, if any, there's some kind of mandate that says you can no longer cover that. As an example, colonoscopies, as most of y'all might be aware, were recommended to get one at age 50. Now that's been lowered to age 45. So that is going to change in the plan document, but again, it's a something that we have to do. I also wanted to mention that we recently had the plan document reviewed by a benefits attorney for compliance purposes. And I'm happy to announce that we had no issues with compliance, which of course we didn't expect it to have, so it's good to know that you have that review. There are some recommendations for language clarification, and we're also asking for approval to make those changes. As an example, something very simple, we use the word preventative, and they want us to use preventive. We use, sometimes we put language on there like the MOOP. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. A maximum out of pocket. They want us to come in and clarify what that means. And
What it specifically means.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Which is maximum out of pocket, between our prescription plan and our dental, our medical plan, and just things like that. But as far as benefits that might affect our plan members, we are in a negative way, or that we feel it might increase the cost of the benefits to the city. We have no such changes this year.
Real quick question.
Yes, sir.
On the health benefits on salaried employees for a single employee, what is the cost to the city as a zero premium to the employee?
What is the cost?
What's the average cost?
The average cost, we're at about $2,400 per member per year.
And that's for single?
For single, that's actually for any coverage for all of our plan members. For single coverage, you're probably looking at about $1,500.
Okay.
At the cost out to the city. Of course, the majority of our single coverage are young single employees. So if we were to compare to the other cost, that is very low cost. But even at the higher plan with family, we're still looking at a maximum of 25,
per year.
24, 25. Yes, sir.
Okay. Council, any questions?
All right. Well,
thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, council. 3 more agenda items and you're through for the year. Just thought I would mention that. The first one on the last 3 is the property insurance. That has changed a lot over the years. When I first got here, we did not insure our fleet of vehicles for what is known as auto physical damage. We didn't have what we felt was a catastrophe exposure. It was one of the first things I asked when I came to work here 27 years ago. I asked the city manager at the time, I said, what is a catastrophe around here? Because I came from the private sector. I'd been in the private sector for 35 years. And part of my job was figuring out how bad could be and whether or not we could afford it, and if so, how we could afford it. And so one of the first things I felt like I needed to do is, what is a catastrophe? Is it when you need to raise taxes? Is it when there needs to be a note to the financial statement? Does it need to be when you have to suddenly call your bonding company and explain something I didn't know? I knew nothing about government. And it's still a hard question to answer. But we decided at some point, and I can tell you when the point was, when the fire department started buying $500,000 ambulances and $750,000 fire engines, and we started rebuilding fire stations because they weren't big enough for the ambulances and the fire engines. And then they kept getting bigger, so the the fire stations kept getting smaller, and over time we kept rebuilding fire stations because all of the equipment kept getting bigger. Nobody wanted to walk up here and stand up in front of you and tell you that, certainly the fire chief did not want to stand up here and say, I need $750,000, because we just totaled a fire engine, flipped it end over end down the freeway, and it's basically just a tumbled mess of wreckage, and so I need $325,000. They wanted there to be a fund where they could draw down on that and pay for it and replace it. So we began insuring all of our high-valued vehicles. We defined that as any vehicle that was worth over $50,000, and we dropped the deductible down from $100,000 to $10,000. So there's some protection against that. We also have a lot more high-valued equipment like backhoes and front-end loaders and other types of equipment. At one point, we bought Mr. Patton a new stage because we lost one of those one time. Every once in a while, we'll have some other accidents. We'll occasionally have hailstorms. We have our property insurance is set up so that you don't have a deductible for every facility. If you count all of everything, I mean, from restrooms in the parks to City Hall where we're sitting, and all of our other, the police department and court, municipal court, we've got around 180, almost $200 million in property values. That does not make us anywhere close to being the largest property owner in town. The largest property owner is probably the school district. In most cities our size it is. But in any event, we insure with the Texas Municipal League's risk pool. They understand municipal government, it's what they do. We, from time to time, will get quotes from some private for-profit insurance companies. They rarely have the premiums that we encounter with TML, which is, once again, not surprising. The next item on here is what we call excess workers' compensation. The Texas Workers' Comp, yes, ma'am.
Answer your question before you move to that one. You said there's not a deductible for every facility. Can you explain?
We have a $100,000 deductible on all of our, I'm an old pipeliner, so I differentiate between above ground properties and below ground properties. All of ours are, for the most part, above ground. We have a $100,000 deductible that applies to that. When we look at the high-value vehicles, the deductible is only $10,000. There are some places where we really have no deductible at all. We insure boiler and machinery mainly because we get free inspections as part of the premium, and we have to have things like boilers and pressure vessels have to be inspected. And the cheapest way to do it is, frankly, to buy boiler and machinery insurance. We also have crime insurance. Right now, we have a limit of $500,000. I always just go to Cindy and say, how much can you steal before we catch you? And that's how I decide how much insurance we need. Because typically, the biggest exposure for most organizations is what is called control fraud. It's fraud by the people in control. In other words, the best way to rob a bank is to own one. And so we tend to be sensitive to that. We are exploring cybercrime insurance. It's become a big issue. We have some cybercrime insurance through the Texas Municipal League. We could have more. We've been working with Mike Parrish and with Cindy on that. I suspect that at some point within the next few months we'll reach the point where we come back to you, probably for the first time in several years, with a proposal to spend some money on cybercrime. We certainly don't want to have to pay off ransomware. And if there is a ransomware, we prefer for somebody else to pay it. We would prefer for somebody else to be in charge of what happens when you have to notify 30,000 water subscribers that all of their credit card information now belongs to somebody else. And there's a lot of other issues of that sort that we'd prefer somebody else to be in charge of. I'm sorry, the answer was too long. I apologize.
Daryl, excuse me, but I think her question is, if we had a hailstorm with all the property we have, there's just one deductible.
There's one just one deductible.
Make sure
Yes.
that.
If the hailstorm moves through and spends all day long, and it hits 100 buildings, everything from restrooms to the parks and City Hall, there's only one deductible that's applicable. And we've had that happen. had significant damage to the new central fire station here a couple, 3 years ago. And were able to secure a claim settlement that went a long way toward getting all of that fixed.
On average, Odessa gets hit with a major hailstorm every 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, continue, sir.
The last item, well, actually, the next item was the excess workers' comp. The excess workers' comp is pretty much the same. This is one of those things where you don't have much of a market. There's one insurance company, as I started to say a moment ago, the Texas Workers' Compensation Act allows public entities to be self-insured for workers' comp. It does not allow private companies to do that, but it does allow public entities. But it also allows us to purchase excess insurance above statutory benefits at some point of attachment. And ours currently is pretty high. It's going to be $750,000. Up until then, all of the weekly indemnity, the salary replacement, the wage replacement part of workers' comp gets paid out by payroll period. Medical in workers' comp these days is unlimited. It's lifetime, and if it's anything and everything that's reasonable and necessary. Starting a couple, 3 years ago, the firefighters union was able to convince the state legislature that certain types of diseases, particularly cancer, were presumed to be in the course and scope of employment. Deidre is aware of that, I'm sure. We've had a couple of those, and we have one that will probably approach $1 million over a period of years. The good news is that workers' comp, for the most part, is paid out over time. The weekly indemnity is rarely paid out as lump sums. It used to be, but lump sums are pretty unusual these days. And the lost time is paid out over time. So you don't, you may end up over a period of years having a big claim, but it is over a period of years. Nevertheless, bad things can happen. In 2007, as most of you will recall, we had 3 police officers gunned down responding to a domestic disturbance call. Ultimately, it cost well over $1 million. The insurance company, Safety National, who we had at the time and still do, responded very well. There was never any quibble about any of those payments. We feel like we have a good relationship with them. Safety National has about 70% of the market for excess workers' compensation. There's a company called Midwest Employers Casualty, which is part of the Berkeley Group, that maybe has 15 to 20%. Safety National is now part of Tokyo Marine, which is a Japanese company. So far, I haven't seen any difference. It's been part of that about a year now. There's a little company called Arch that will dabble in it, and Chubb will bid on a big city. They'll insure Houston and Dallas, but they like their minimum premium to be $500,000. And right now, we're not paying anywhere close to that. Finally, any question about the excess workers' comp? The final item is public entity liability. It's a huge package of different kinds of liability. General liability for your operations and premises. If somebody gets hurt on your property, if somebody gets hurt due to your operations and files a lawsuit, it covers all of the liability arising out of our fleet. It covers law enforcement liability. It would be everything from false imprisonment to excessive force, to police brutality, to anything of that sort. It would cover the George Floyd $26 million settlement that the city of Minneapolis made. If we had $26 million coverage, which we do not, we have $10 million coverage. We could buy more, but it starts getting expensive real fast. Is $10 million enough? I don't know. When I was in the private sector working for a gas pipeline company, that had a line going through the corner of the computerized thing of the Chevrolet company in Tennessee, assembly plant. I was afraid I was going to have to buy a year's worth of Chevrolets someday, so I had $300 million worth of coverage. Right now, $10 million seems to be about right for us. In addition to general liability, auto liability, law enforcement, it covers you guys. It covers public officials' liability, which is the public sector version of what the private sector calls directors and officers' liability. Because you can be sued for all kinds of things for any reason or no reason. It doesn't cost very much to go down to the courthouse and file a suit. And there are people who will not like what you do in terms of perhaps appointing people to the ODC, or perhaps decisions that are made about planning and zoning. Some developer may say, well, you know, if it hadn't been for the city council, he would have made $1 billion on that tract of land that you wouldn't zone properly or allow to be zoned properly. Most of the big problems for public officials comes from employment liability, actually. Public officials' liability and employment practices liability are almost always sold together, and so is ours. So we have employment practices liability. We have environmental liability, because one of these days you're going to grant a drilling permit to somebody, and somebody else is going to suddenly have an earthquake. Have you noticed the last few years you're sitting in your den and all of a sudden, wham! You know, you didn't have that happen before, right?
Don't do that.
But now you do, and it's obvious that it wouldn't have happened if you had not granted a drilling permit to that company. So they're going to sue you for lots of stuff. There's a lot of stuff you can be sued for. We have you covered, okay? Covers all sorts of incidental things like EMT malpractice and so forth is that. It is with a company called the States Risk Retention Group, which is organized under the Federal Risk Retention Act from back in the 1970s when you couldn't buy liability insurance. When I got here 25 years ago, you had no liability insurance, but neither did any other city. Everybody was what they call barefoot, because the premiums either wasn't available or the premiums were too high, and no city had it. That began to lessen, and at some point we started buying it, and we still do. And as long as it's affordable, we'll continue that. Someday I may walk up here and say, guys, it's too high. I'm going to make a proposal that we go back to being barefoot. But it means that you're going to be subject to liability that's infinite. One of the reasons that Mrs. Ortiz told you recently about the renewal on the medical excess is after the Affordable Care Act was passed, we were no longer allowed, no health plan was allowed to have annual maximums or lifetime maximums. It's just how high is high. What is the limit of our liability under our self-insured health plan? Infinity, and we don't like infinity. So that's why we buy the medical stop loss after a certain amount. They step, and we actually do have insurance. And we're kind of the same way with the public entity liability. And that's pretty much it for the year again. And I know everybody's been a good little boy and girl all year, and I hope Santa Claus is good to all of you. And
Gerald, I do have a question.
Sure.
The public entity liability went back and talked about how there's insurance for, obviously, the council. Does that coverage extend like to the ODC and to all our boards?
yes,
Okay, so
yes, the ODC is insured. Matter of fact, I was looking at a proposal
The
just
ODC is
recently.
a creation, you know, and it was through, well, I'm not sure if it was always resolution, but nonetheless, it was creation. What about subcommittees that are created by our boards, like the ODC and other ones? That were the kids, but the ODC is an example. And, you know, they create a board. But what about in the ODC's case, where they fund from the money they're collecting to other organizations that directly are getting city funds?
No.
Well, taxpayer funds. If they're not covered by this type of insurance, is there a liability to come back to the city or the ODC in that regard?
I'll have to refer the liability issue to your city attorney, but first of all, the ODC actually has a separate directors and officers liability insurance policy.
For them?
For them. And all of the board members of the ODC are covered under that policy. I remember when that was done.
So as they dispense and allocate and grant monies that are monies from sales tax, and if those entities are not covered by that, is there a liability that comes back to the ODC? Could potentially.
What you're asking is, can the ODC or any of its members be sued where there's an allegation that had it not been for their incompetence, stupidity, actions, whatever, tax money was thereby lost, and somebody who has standing can say, well, you know, that hurt me, that I was injured by that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they could sue you. I'm not the city attorney, but I think, number one, they can sue you. Would there be, your second question is there insurance for that? No. The ODC would be covered by their directors and officers liability insurance. If the city council, if you or any of you as an individual were sued, our public officials liability would respond to that. Yes.
Okay.
You'd be covered by the public officials liability. That's part of the public entity liability policy. The ODC would be covered by the directors and officers liability that they carry separately. The firefighters relief and pension plan has a board, and they have fiduciary liability in case they made some bad decisions about investments, and the firefighters decided to sue them as an individual.
Okay, well, there's something specific, but what I'll do is I'll get with the attorney and the city manager, and I'll send you a specific question that I want to answer without disclosing too much. But you know, I was just curious about that. Council, any other questions or comments to Darryl?
I move we adjourn.
Thank you very much, Darryl.
Thank you. Have a good week.
Seeing that there's no more business before the city council, I have a motion to adjourn by Councilmember Sprouls. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Willis. All in favor indicated by saying aye. Aye. All opposed indicated by saying nay. Motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned.
Everybody has to wait on me.
Okay. No, there's lights to dust.
Yeah, I should have warned you.
No. No. We really don't need a motion to adjourn. Just saying that there's no more.